Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin. Reed Monroe stood in his kitchen, methodically chopping vegetables for the anniversary dinner he'd planned. The sharp blade of the chef's knife sliced through crisp bell peppers and onions with practiced ease. He glanced at his watch at 5:30 p.m. Carmen should be home soon. As if on cue, he heard the front door open and close. Footsteps approached, and Carmen appeared in the doorway, still dressed in her work attire, a sleek pencil skirt and silk blouse. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, but a few strands had escaped, framing her face. "Hey," she said, her voice tight. "What's all this?" Reed set down the knife and turned to face her, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "Dinner," he replied simply. "For our anniversary." Carmen's eyes widened slightly. "All right, of course." She glanced around the kitchen, taking in the bottle of wine chilling in an ice bucket, the unlit candles on the table, the soft music playing in the background. Reed watched her carefully, noting the way she shifted her weight from one foot to the other, how her fingers played with the strap of her purse. "Everything okay?" he asked. Carmen plastered on a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Yeah, just a bit stressed. Work's been crazy." She hesitated, then added, "Actually, about that, I hate to do this, but I need to go back to the office. We've got this last-minute project, and the client's breathing down our necks." Reed felt a familiar tightness in his chest, a mixture of disappointment and suspicion that he'd grown accustomed to over the past few months. He kept his face neutral, his voice calm. "On our anniversary?" Carmen had the grace to look guilty. "I know, I'm sorry. I'll make it up to you, I promise. It's just, you know how it is. This could mean a big promotion for me." Reed nodded slowly. "Right? Of course." He turned back to the cutting board, picking up the knife again. "Don't worry about it. Go do what you need to do." He could feel Carmen hesitate behind him. "Are you sure? You're not mad?" Reed looked over his shoulder, his expression carefully blank. "It's fine, Carmen. I get it. Work comes first." Carmen stepped forward, placing a hand on his arm. "Hey, that's not fair. You know how important this is to me. To us. A promotion would mean—" "I said it's fine," Reed interrupted, his tone sharper than he intended. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to soften his voice. "Really? Go. We can celebrate another time." Carmen leaned in and kissed his cheek. "You're the best. I'll try not to be too late." With that, she was gone, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor as she retreated. Reed stood motionless for a long moment after he heard the front door close. Then, with deliberate movements, he began to clean up. He poured the chopped vegetables into a container and placed it in the fridge. The wine went back into the liquor cabinet. He blew out the candles he'd lit earlier, watching the thin tendrils of smoke dissipate in the air. As he worked, his mind raced. This wasn't the first time Carmen had canceled plans at the last minute. Late nights at the office had become more frequent, as had hushed phone conversations that ended abruptly when he entered the room. He tried to ignore the signs, to give her the benefit of the doubt, but doubt was a persistent thing, gnawing at the edges of his mind. Reed glanced at the clock at 6:15 p.m. He made a decision. Grabbing his keys, he headed out to his car. The streets of Chicago were busy with evening traffic as Reed navigated towards the financial district where Carmen worked. He parked a block away from her office building and waited, his eyes fixed on the entrance. Minutes ticked by, stretching into an hour. Reed's fingers drummed restlessly on the steering wheel. Just as he was about to give up and head home, he saw her. Carmen emerged from the building, but she wasn't alone. A tall man with sandy blonde hair walked beside her, his hand resting casually on the small of her back. Reed recognized him immediately as Shane Riker, the graphic designer from Carmen's office. He'd met Shane at a company party once, noted the way his eyes had lingered on Carmen a bit too long. At the time, Reed had brushed it off as harmless flirtation. Now, watching them walk to Shane's car, their bodies angled towards each other, laughing at some shared joke, Reed felt a cold certainty settle in his gut. He followed them at a discreet distance, his hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. They didn't head towards Carmen's office or any of the nearby restaurants. Instead, Shane's car wound its way through the city until it pulled up outside a familiar bar. The Rusty Nail, Shane's favorite haunt. Reed parked across the street, his mind racing. He could confront them now, storm into the bar, and demand answers. But something held him back. A cold, calculating part of him whispered to wait, to gather more evidence, to make absolutely sure before he acted. So he waited, watching the entrance of the bar. Through the large front window, he could see Carmen and Shane seated at a corner table. They were leaning close, their hands intertwined on the table. As Reed watched, Shane reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind Carmen's ear, his touch lingering on her cheek. The sight sent a jolt of pain through Reed's chest, quickly followed by a wave of icy rage. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, his breath coming in short, sharp bursts. He forced himself to stay put, to keep watching. Hours passed. The bar began to empty as the night wore on. Finally, just after midnight, Carmen and Shane emerged. They were slightly unsteady on their feet, leaning into each other as they walked to Shane's car. Reed's jaw clenched as he watched Shane open the passenger door for Carmen, his hand lingering on her waist as she got in. Reed followed them again, this time to an apartment complex he didn't recognize. He parked across the street, watching as Shane and Carmen stumbled out of the car and made their way inside the building. For a long moment, Reed sat in silence, his mind a whirlwind of emotions. Then, with deliberate movements, he got out of his car and walked across the street. He found Shane's name on the buzzer panel and noted the apartment number. Back in his car, Reed waited. He wasn't sure what he was waiting for exactly, but he knew he couldn't leave. Not yet. Not until he had incontrovertible proof of what he already knew in his heart to be true. As the hours crept by, Reed's anger simmered, transforming from a hot, reactive fury into something colder, more calculated. He thought about the years he'd spent with Carmen, the life they'd built together. He thought about trust and betrayal, about loyalty and deceit. And slowly, a plan began to form in his mind. The sky was just beginning to lighten with the first hints of dawn when movement in one of the apartment windows caught Reed's attention. He saw them clearly, Carmen and Shane, wrapped in each other's arms, kissing passionately. The sight should have hurt. It should have torn him apart. Instead, Reed felt oddly calm, almost detached. With steady hands, he turned on his car's headlights, aiming them directly at Shane's window. The bright beams cut through the early morning darkness, illuminating the scene inside like a spotlight. Reed watched as Carmen and Shane broke apart, startled by the sudden light. He saw the moment of confusion on their faces, followed quickly by panic as they rushed to the window. And then, finally, he saw the horror dawn in Carmen's eyes as she recognized his car. For a long moment, Reed held her gaze. He didn't yell, didn't gesticulate wildly. He simply stared, his face a mask of cold fury. Then, without a word, he put his car in gear and drove away, leaving Carmen and Shane frozen in the window, bathed in the harsh glare of his headlights. Reed drove aimlessly for a while, his mind oddly quiet. The city was just beginning to wake up around him, early morning joggers and dog walkers populating the sidewalks. Eventually, he found himself pulling up outside a familiar bar, the Grindstone, owned by his best friend Zane. The closed sign was still hanging in the window, but Reed knew Zane would be inside, prepping for the day. He knocked on the door, 3 sharp raps that echoed in the quiet street. A moment later, Zane appeared, his expression changing from annoyance to concern as he recognized Reed. He quickly unlocked the door. "Reed, what are you doing here so early? You look like hell, man." Reed stepped inside, the familiar smell of stale beer and wood polish wrapping around him like a comforting blanket. "I need a drink," he said simply. Zane raised an eyebrow, but didn't argue. He locked the door behind Reed and moved behind the bar, pulling out a bottle of top-shelf whiskey and 2 glasses. "All right, talk to me. What's going on?" Reed settled onto a bar stool, accepting the glass Zane slid towards him. He took a long sip, letting the burn of the alcohol ground him. Then, in a voice devoid of emotion, he began to speak. He told Zane everything: the canceled anniversary dinner, his suspicions following Carmen and Shane, the long night of waiting, and finally, the damning scene in the apartment window. Zane listened silently, refilling their glasses when needed, his face growing darker with each new detail. When Reed finished, Zane let out a low whistle. "Jesus, Reed. I'm so sorry, man. What are you going to do?" Reed took another sip of his whiskey, his eyes cold and determined. "I'm not going to forgive," he said, his voice like ice. "I'm going to ruin them." Zane nodded slowly, understanding the depth of Reed's pain and the intensity of his resolve. He raised his glass in a simple toast. "To pay back," he said solemnly. A small, dangerous smirk played at the corners of Reed's mouth as he clinked his glass against Zane's. "To pay back," he echoed, his mind already racing with plans for revenge. As they drank, the first rays of sunlight began to filter through the bar's windows, heralding the start of a new day. But for Reed, it marked the beginning of something else, a calculated, unforgiving campaign of retribution against those who had betrayed him. The joke was over, and now it was time for Carmen and Shane to face the consequences of their actions. Reed woke early the next morning, his mind clear despite the lack of sleep. He'd spent the night on Zane's couch, unwilling to return to the house he shared with Carmen. Now, as the first rays of sunlight filtered through the blinds, he steeled himself for what lay ahead. He found Zane in the kitchen, brewing coffee. His friend looked up as Reed entered, concern etched on his face. "How you holding up, man?" Reed accepted the mug Zane offered him, taking a long sip before answering. "I'm fine. I know what I need to do." Zane leaned against the counter, studying Reed's face. "You sure about this? Once you start down this road, there's no going back," Reed finished. "I know, but she made her choice. Now it's time for me to make mine." Zane nodded slowly. "All right, what's the plan?" Reed set down his mug, his eyes cold and determined. "First, I need to go home. There are some things I need to take care of." The drive back to his house felt surreal. Reed parked in the driveway, noting Carmen's car was already there. He took a deep breath, steeling himself for the confrontation ahead. As he entered, he heard movement upstairs. Carmen appeared at the top of the stairs, her eyes red and puffy. "Reed, where have you been? I've been calling you all night." Reed ignored her, moving purposefully into the dining room. He pulled out a thick envelope from his briefcase and laid it on the table. Carmen followed him, her voice trembling. "Reed, please. We need to talk about this. It's not what you think, isn't it?" Reed's voice was sharp as he turned to face her. "Because I think I saw my wife in another man's apartment last night. I think I saw her kissing him. Tell me, Carmen, what part of that did I misunderstand?" Carmen flinched at his words. I made a mistake. It was stupid. I know that. But it didn't mean anything. Shane and I, we just... Save it." Reed cut her off. He gestured to the envelope on the table. "Divorce papers. I had them drawn up months ago." Carmen's eyes widened in shock. "Months ago? But why?" Reed laughed, a harsh, humorless sound. "Because I'm not an idiot, Carmen. The late nights at work, the hush phone calls, the way you'd pull away whenever I tried to get close. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to believe it." Tears welled up in Carmen's eyes. "Reed, please. We can work this out. I'll end things with Shane, I promise. It was just a fling. It didn't mean anything." "A fling?" Reed's voice was dangerously quiet. "Is that what you call betraying your marriage vows? Breaking the trust of the person who stood by you for 10 years. Carmen reached out, trying to grasp his hand. Reed stepped back, avoiding her touch. "I'm sorry," she pleaded. "I'm so sorry. Please give me another chance. I love you, Reed." For a moment, Reed said nothing. Then, his voice cold and controlled, he spoke. "You made your choice, Carmen. Now you have to live with it." He turned away from her, picking up a notepad from the counter. As he wrote, he continued speaking. "I've already started the paperwork to sell the house." Carmen gasped. "What? But you can't do that without my consent." Reed looked up, his eyes hard. "Actually, I can. Remember that refinancing we did last year? The one you were too busy to deal with. So you gave me power of attorney?" He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Turns out, that was very convenient." He tore the paper from the notepad and attached it to the divorce papers. "There's a note for your freedom with Shane. I'm sure you'll be very happy together." Carmen's face crumpled. "Reed, please. Don't do this. We can work it out. We can go to counseling." "There's nothing to work out," Reed interrupted. "You made your bed, Carmen. Now lie in it." With that, he turned and walked out of the house, ignoring Carmen's sobs behind him. As he got into his car, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The first phase of his plan was complete. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Reed moved into a small apartment, throwing himself into his work during the day and planning his revenge at night. He ignored Carmen's constant calls and messages, each one more desperate than the last. A week after their confrontation, Reed received a call from an unknown number. He answered warily. "Mr. Monroe?" A woman's voice came through the line. "This is Layla Eastwood from HR at Pinnacle Marketing. I hope you don't mind me calling, but, well, there's been some talk around the office, and I thought you should know." Reed's interest peaked. "What kind of talk, Ms. Eastwood?" Layla hesitated before continuing. "About your wife, ex-wife, and Shane Riker. It's all anyone can talk about. I wanted you to know that not everyone is on their side. What they did, it's not right." "I appreciate that, Ms. Eastwood," Reed said carefully. "Can I ask why you're telling me this?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. Let's just say I have no respect for people who can't keep their promises. Layla finally replied, her voice hard. If there's anything I can do to help? Reed smiled to himself. Actually, Ms. Eastwood, there might be. Can we meet for coffee? The next day, Reed sat in a small cafe, waiting for Layla. She arrived right on time, a petite woman with a no-nonsense air about her. Mr. Monroe, she greeted him, sliding into the seat across from him. Thank you for meeting me. Please call me Reed, he replied. And thank you for reaching out. I appreciate your discretion in this matter. Layla nodded, her eyes sharp. Of course. Now, what can I do to help? Reed leaned forward, his voice low. I need information, Layla. Anything you can tell me about Carmen and Shane's relationship. How long it's been going on, who knows about it, how it's affecting their work. Layla didn't hesitate. It's been going on for at least 6 months as far as I can tell. They thought they were being discreet, but she snorted. Let's just say subtlety isn't their strong suit. As for who knows at this point, pretty much everyone. The gossip spread like wildfire after you confronted them. Reed nodded, taking in the information. And their work? Carmen's slipping, Layla said bluntly. She's distracted, making mistakes. And Shane? Well, let's just say his charm isn't working as well as it used to. People are starting to see him for what he really is. And what's that? Reed asked, genuinely curious. Layla's eyes hardened. A selfish, manipulative jerk who doesn't care who he hurts as long as he gets what he wants. Reed couldn't help but smile. It seemed he had an unexpected ally in Layla. Thank you, Layla. This is very helpful. Is there anything else you think I should know? Layla hesitated for a moment, then reached into her bag and pulled out a USB drive. This contains some sensitive information. Emails, calendar entries, that sort of thing. I probably shouldn't have access to this, but she shrugged. Sometimes people forget to log out of their computers. Reed took the drive, slipping it into his pocket. I appreciate this, Layla. More than you know. As they parted ways, Reed felt a surge of satisfaction. The pieces of his plan were falling into place. Over the next few weeks, Reed put the information Layla had given him to good use. Anonymous tips to Carmen's superiors about her declining work performance. Carefully leaked emails hinting at her inappropriate relationship with Shane. Whispered rumors in the right ears. He watched from afar as Carmen's carefully constructed professional image began to crumble. The whispers and judgmental glances followed her wherever she went. Her confident stride became hesitant. Her head bowed under the weight of her colleagues' disapproval. One evening, as Reed was leaving his office, his phone buzzed with a text from Zane. You need to see this. Come to the bar. Intrigued, Reed made his way to the grindstone. As he entered, Zane motioned him over to the end of the bar, where a small TV was mounted on the wall. Watch, Zane said, turning up the volume. On the screen, a news anchor was mid-report. Forced resignation of Shane Riker from Pinnacle Marketing. Sources close to the company's cite inappropriate workplace behavior as the reason for Riker's departure. This comes on the heels of several complaints filed with the company's HR department. Reed couldn't help the small smile that played on his lips. Zane caught the expression and raised an eyebrow. You're doing? He asked. Reed shrugged, his face a mask of innocence. He made his bed. Zane shook his head, a mix of admiration and concern in his eyes. Remind me never to get on your bad side, man. As they shared a drink, Reed's phone buzzed again. This time was a call from Carmen. After a moment's hesitation, he answered. What do you want, Carmen? Her voice came through, shaky and desperate. Reed, please. I need to talk to you. Can we meet? Reed considered for a moment, then made a decision. Fine. My apartment, 1 hour. He hung up without waiting for a response. Zane looked at him questioningly. You sure about this? Reed nodded, his eyes cold. It's time to end this. An hour later, Reed heard a knock at his apartment door. He opened it to find Carmen standing there, a shadow of her former self. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her usually immaculate appearance disheveled. Come in, Reed said, his voice devoid of emotion. Carmen stepped inside, her eyes darting around the sparse apartment. Reed, I don't know where to start. How about the truth? Reed suggested, his tone icy. For once, Carmen flinched at his words. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I made a terrible mistake. I've lost everything. My job, my reputation. Shane. Reed raised an eyebrow. Shane? What happened there? Carmen laughed bitterly. He dumped me. Said I was Too much drama. Can you believe it? I threw everything away for him. Any? She trailed off, tears welling in her eyes. What do you want from me, Carmen? Reed asked, his voice hard. She looked up at him, her eyes pleading. A second chance? Please, Reed. I know I don't deserve it, but I love you. I always have. What I did with Shane, it was stupid and selfish, but it didn't mean anything. You're the one I want to be with. For a long moment, Reed said nothing. He studied Carmen's face, seeing the desperation, the fear, the hope. Then slowly he shook his head. No, he said simply. Carmen's face crumpled. Reed, please dash no. He repeated, his voice firm. You're right, Carmen. You don't deserve a second chance. What you did, it wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. You chose to betray me, to lie to me, to throw away 10 years of marriage for what? A fling with a co-worker. He stepped closer to her, his eyes boring into hers. You made your choice, Carmen, and now you have to live with the consequences. I don't love you anymore. I don't even know if I ever really knew you. Carmen sobbed, reaching out to him. Reed, please. I'll do anything. I'll change, I promise. Just give me one more chance. Reed stepped back, avoiding her touch. It's too late for that, Carmen. We're done. The divorce will be finalized soon, and then you'll be out of my life for good. What am I supposed to do? Carmen cried, her voice breaking. I've lost everything. Reed's face was impassive as he opened the door. That's not my problem anymore. Goodbye, Carmen. As he closed the door on her sobbing form, Reed felt a sense of finality wash over him. It was done. He had dismantled the life she had so carelessly thrown away, piece by piece. She had made her choice, and now she would have to live with it. He walked to the window, looking out over the city. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. As he watched the light fade, Reed felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The anger, the pain, the betrayal, it was all still there, but muted now, overshadowed by a sense of grim satisfaction. He had survived. More than that, he had emerged victorious. Carmen and Shane had thought they could play him for a fool, but he had shown them the error of their ways. They had underestimated him, and that had been their downfall. As darkness fell over the city, Reed turned away from the window. He had a new life to build now, one free from the shadows of betrayal and deceit. And as he looked towards that future, he felt something he hadn't in a long time hope. The joke was over, and Reed Monroe had the last laugh. The sun had barely risen when Reed's phone buzzed with a text from Layla. You need to see this. Shane's apartment, ASP. Reed frowned, quickly dressing and heading out. He arrived at Shane's building just as Layla pulled up in her car. What's going on? Reed asked as they walked towards the entrance. Layla's eyes gleamed with a mix of excitement and vindication. Carmen showed up about an hour ago. They've been arguing ever since. Loudly, Reed raised an eyebrow. And how do you know this? I may have made friends with Shane's neighbor, Layla replied with a smirk. She's been keeping me updated. They reached Shane's floor and found an older woman standing in the hallway, her ear pressed against Shane's door. She looked up as they approached, nodding in recognition at Layla. You're just in time, the woman whispered. It's getting good. Reed stepped closer to the door, Carmen's voice becoming clearer as he did. How could you do this to me, Shane? Carmen's voice was shrill, tinged with desperation. After everything I gave up for you. Shane's response was cold, dismissive. Come on, Carmen. You can't be serious. What did you expect? That we'd ride off into the sunset together? I left my husband for you, Carmen shouted. I lost my job, my reputation, everything. And that's my problem, how? Shane's voice dripped with disdain. Look, it was fun while it lasted, but let's be real. You're too much drama. I don't need this shit in my life. There was a moment of stunned silence, then the sound of something shattering against a wall. You bastards, Carmen screamed. You ruined my life. Shane laughed, a cruel sound that made Reed's fists clench. No, sweetheart. You did that all on your own. I didn't force you to cheat on your husband. I didn't make you risk your job. That was all you. The door suddenly flew open, and Shane stormed out, nearly colliding with Reed. He stumbled back, his eyes widening in shock. Reed? What the hell are you doing here? Before Reed could respond, Carmen appeared in the doorway. Her face was tear-stained, her hair a mess. She froze when she saw Reed, her expression a mix of shame and despair. Reed, she whispered. I can explain. Reed held up a hand, silencing her. He turned to Shane, his voice dangerously calm. You and I need to have a chat. Shane's bravado faltered under Reed's cold stare. Look, man, I don't want any trouble. You should have thought of that before you slept with my wife. Reed cut him off. He glanced at Layla. Could you give us a moment? Layla nodded, ushering the neighbor back to her apartment. Reed turned back to Shane and Carmen. Both of you inside. Now. They filed back into Shane's apartment, the tension palpable. Reed closed the door behind them, surveying the scene. A shattered vase lay on the floor, water and flowers scattered across the hardwood. Sit, Reed commanded, pointing to the couch. Carmen and Shane complied, looking like chastised children. Reed remained standing, his posture rigid. I want you both to listen very carefully to what I'm about to say. He turned to Carmen first. You made a choice, Carmen. You chose to throw away our marriage, to betray my trust, to destroy the life we built together. And for what? For him. He jerked his head towards Shane, who flinched. Carmen opened her mouth to speak, but Reed silenced her with a look. I'm not finished. You want to know the worst part? It's not that you cheated. It's that you lied. For months, you looked me in the eye and lied. Every late night at the office, every hush phone call, every time you pulled away from me, all lies. He turned to Shane next. And you think you're clever, don't you? The office charmer, the guy who can get any woman he wants. Did it make you feel big, sneaking around with a married woman? Did it boost your ego to know you were destroying someone else's relationship? Shane's face flushed with anger. Hey, I didn't force her to do anything. She came to me. Shut up, Reed snapped. You're both adults. You both made your choices. And now, you're both going to face the consequences. He pulled out his phone, showing them the screen. I have emails, text messages, photos, everything. Your little affair wasn't as secret as you thought. I could ruin both of you with this. Destroy what's left of your careers, your reputations. Carmen gasped, her face paling. Reed, please. You wouldn't I? Reed's voice was cold. You didn't think I'd find out about your affair either, did you? You both severely underestimated me. He pocketed his phone, his eyes hard. But I'm not going to do that. Not because you don't deserve it, but because you're not worth the effort. You've already ruined your own lives. I don't need to do anything more. Reed turned to leave, but Shane's voice stopped him. That's it? You're just going to walk away? Reed turned back slowly, his eyes boring into Shane's. What did you expect? That I'd punch you? That we'd have some dramatic showdown? He shook his head. You're not worth it, Shane. Neither of you are. He looked at Carmen one last time. The divorce will be finalized next week. After that, I never want to see or hear from either of you again. Is that clear? Carmen nodded, tears streaming down her face. Shane just looked away, his jaw clenched. Reed opened the door, pausing for a moment. I almost feel sorry for you both. Almost. With that, he walked out, closing the door firmly behind him. Layla was waiting in the hallway, her eyes wide with curiosity. Well, what happened? Reed gave her a small smile. It's over. Let's get out of here. As they walked out of the building, Layla studied Reed's face. Are you okay? Reed took a deep breath, considering the question. You know what? I think I am. For the first time in a long time, I feel free. Layla nodded, a hint of admiration in her eyes. You're stronger than I would have been. I don't know if I could have faced them like that. Reed shrugged. They don't have any power over me anymore. I've taken that away from them. As they parted ways, Reed felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had faced his betrayers, looked them in the eye, and walked away on his own terms. It was a victory, but a bittersweet one. The next few days passed in a blur. Reed threw himself into his work, staying late at the office and taking on extra projects. It was easier to focus on coding than to dwell on the ruins of his personal life. On Friday evening, as Reed was packing up to leave, his boss stopped by his desk. Reed, got a minute? Reed nodded, following him to his office. His boss closed the door, a serious expression on his face. I'm not going to beat around the bush, Reed. We've been impressed with your work lately. Really impressed. I know you've been going through some personal issues, but your performance has been exceptional. Reed straightened in his chair. Thank you, sir. I've been trying to stay focused. His boss nodded. It shows. That's why I wanted to talk to you. We got a new project starting up, a big one. Fortune 500 client, cutting-edge tech. We need our best people on it, and we want you to lead the development team. Reed blinked in surprise. Lead the team? Are you sure? Absolutely, his boss replied with a smile. It comes with a significant pay bump and a promotion to senior developer. What do you say? A slow smile spread across Reed's face. I say, when do I start? As Reed left the office that evening, his step was lighter than it had been in months. He pulled out his phone, dialing Zane's number. "Hey man, you free tonight? I've got news." And we're celebrating. A few hours later, Reed sat at the bar in the Grindstone, nursing a whiskey as he filled Zane in on the events of the past few days. Zane whistled low. "Damn, Reed. Confronting Carmen and Shane, landing a big promotion. You've been busy." Reed chuckled. "It's been a hell of a week." Zane studied his friend's face. "How are you really doing, though? With everything?" Reed took a sip of his drink, considering the question. "Honestly, I'm okay. Better than okay. Actually, for the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm in control of my life. Like I'm moving forward instead of just treading water." Zane nodded, clapping Reed on the shoulder. "I'm proud of you, man. You've been through the ringer, but you came out stronger." As they continued to talk and drink, Reed felt a sense of peace settle over him. He had survived the storm, emerged from the wreckage of his marriage not just intact, but stronger. He had faced his betrayers and walked away on his own terms. The next week passed quickly. Reed threw himself into preparations for his new role at work, barely noticing when the final divorce papers arrived. He signed them without hesitation, feeling a sense of closure as he dropped them in the mailbox. On Saturday morning, Reed found himself driving through his old neighborhood. He hadn't planned to come here, but something had drawn him back. As he turned onto his old street, he saw a moving truck parked in front of his former home. Reed pulled over, watching as a young family bustled about, carrying boxes and furniture into the house. A little girl chased a dog across the lawn, her laughter carrying on the breeze. It was a scene of domestic bliss, so similar to what he had once imagined for himself and Carmen. As he sat there, lost in thought, he noticed a familiar figure on the sidewalk. Carmen stood frozen, staring at the scene before her. She looked haggard, a far cry from the polished professional she had once been. For a moment, Reed considered driving away, but something made him get out of the car instead. He approached Carmen slowly, stopping a few feet away. "Carmen," he said softly. She startled, turning to face him. Her eyes widened in recognition, a mix of emotions flashing across her face: shame, regret, longing. "Reed," she whispered. What are you doing here?" Reed shrugged. "Just driving by." "You?" Carmen's eyes darted back to the house. "I don't know. I needed to see it, I guess." One last time, they stood in silence for a moment, watching the happy family in their old home. Finally, Carmen spoke again, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry, Reed, for everything. I know it doesn't change anything, but I am truly, deeply sorry." Reed really looked at her for the first time in months. He saw the toll their divorce had taken on her, the dark circles under her eyes, the slump in her shoulders, the defeat in her posture. For a brief moment, he felt a flicker of pity, but then he remembered the lies, the betrayal, the pain she had caused. The pity faded, replaced by a cool detachment. "You're right," he said calmly. "It doesn't change anything." Carmen flinched at his words, but nodded. "I know. I wanted you to know. I've lost everything, Reed. My job, my reputation, my life. And it's all my fault." Reed sighed. "What do you want from me, Carmen? Forgiveness? Absolution? I can't give you that." Tears welled up in Carmen's eyes. "I don't know what I want. I miss you. I miss us. What we had is gone," Reed said firmly. "You destroyed it. And now we both have to live with that." He turned back to the house, watching as the little girl ran into her father's arms, squealing with delight as he swung her around. "Look at them," Reed said softly. "That could have been us, a family of future. But you threw it all away for what? A fling with a co-worker who didn't even care about you." Carmen sobbed quietly beside him. "I know. God, Reed, I know. I've replayed every moment, every decision, over and over in my head. If I could go back." "But you can't," Reed interrupted. "None of us can. We can only move forward." He turned to face her fully. "I'm not angry anymore, Carmen. I'm not even hurt. I'm just done. This chapter of our lives is over. It's time for both of us to move on." Carmen wiped her eyes, nodding slowly. "You're right. I know you're right. I don't know how to let go." Reed's expression softened slightly. "You'll figure it out. We both will. But not together. Never again together." He stepped back, preparing to leave. "Goodbye, Carmen. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for. But I won't be the one to give it to you." As he walked back to his car, Reed heard Carmen call out one last time. "Reed, are you happy?" Reed paused, considering the question. Then, without turning back, he answered, "I'm getting there. And that's enough for now." He got into his car and drove away, leaving Carmen and the remnants of their shared past behind. As he merged onto the highway, heading back to his new apartment, his new life, Reed felt a sense of lightness he hadn't experienced in years. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Reed felt ready to face whatever came next. He had weathered the storm of betrayal, emerged stronger, more resilient. The joke was over, and he had the last laugh. As the city skyline came into view, Reed allowed himself a small smile. The future was his to shape now, unburdened by the weight of broken promises and shattered trust. And as he drove towards that future, Reed Monroe felt something he hadn't in a long time: hope.